Let's put this all in perspective. The Biden administration told us in February that it really couldn't get too much information. There was really no need to freak out about it, and they had no reason to shut it down immediately or blow it up. They could just wait for it to sail all the way across the United States of America, get into the Atlantic Ocean, and then shoot it down. And now, 2 months later, after everybody's forgotten it, now comes the truth from 3 officials, senior officials, one of whom has left the White House. And now they're admitting that actually China was able to get a great deal of electronic intelligence, and we were not as successful in blocking the transmission of that information as we presumed that we would. It was all for show by the Biden administration. No one, of course, is willing to acknowledge they should have shot it down at the time. Y'all, have you ever been to the upper Northwest? Believe it or not, there is actually not a massive pile of humanity up there. It is open, empty space. You could have shot this thing down if you wanted to, Mr. President. It would not have landed on anyone other than gophers, maybe a wolf. It could have taken on an endangered species, I guess. But it would have happened. Interestingly enough, China was able to steer this thing. This is something new we're learning as well. China had some sort of remote capability to steer the balloon in figure-8 patterns to make sure in the jet stream it had propellers in order to keep it near stationary above certain U.S. military bases. That is new as well. What is also new is it had a self-destruct capability that was not activated. In other words, and this is important, in other words, it was far more sophisticated than what the government wanted us to believe. And in fact, the government knew it at the time. How do we know the government knew it at the time? Because one of the officials has already left the government and had this information. The balloon entered our airspace in Alaska on January 28th. Remember, originally, the Biden administration said they weren't aware of the balloon until it entered American airspace. Only later did we learn that too was a lie. The Biden administration had been tracking the balloon since it lifted off in China. Additionally, originally, the Biden administration said they had reason to believe it had probably blown off course and was not intended to come into American airspace. Now we know not only was it intended to come into American airspace, but the Chinese could steer it. Essentially, everything they said is a lie. Everything the Biden administration said about the Chinese spy balloon at the time was a lie. All of it. They lied to the American public. What do you think that signals to China? My guess is it signals to China several things. 1, weakness. 2, U.S. inferior capabilities. 3, the Biden administration is scared of China and unwilling to rock relations with China. At the time, this from NBC News, the U.S. government said it waited to shoot the balloon down until it was over the ocean to avoid any damage or casualties on the ground. The balloon, which was nearly as large as 3 school buses, would have had a large debris field that U.S. officials could not control as it fell to Earth. U.S. military commanders had determined downing the balloon while over land posed an undue risk to people across a wide area due to the size and altitude of the balloon and its surveillance payload. Officials have tried to reconstruct the balloon from the recovered debris. They're not actually interested in the balloon. They're interested in what it had underneath it. Again, this is a key point here. This can't be emphasized enough. The Biden administration knew that this balloon was in the air and had left China and had monitored it since it left China and lied to us and said they didn't know about it until it was over Alaska. Then the Biden administration lied to us and said they presumed it had blown off course when in fact we now know that the balloon had a steering mechanism that allowed the Chinese to control where it went. Then the Biden administration lied to us and said it wasn't capable of gathering much more than a low-altitude satellite could gather, when in fact they're now willing to admit China could steer the thing, hold it over military bases, and get not just signals but electronic intelligence that a low-altitude satellite balloon would not, or satellite would not have been able to get. They lied to us, they lied to us, they lied to us, they lied to us, time and time again. And notice that so many people in the American media continue to give this president a pass. If Donald Trump, all you got to do is say, if Donald Trump lied to the American people about when they knew about the balloon, if Donald Trump lied to the American people about the ability of the balloon to steer itself, if Donald Trump lied to the American people about the ability of the balloon to collect intelligence, if Donald Trump lied to people about the ability to destroy the balloon, if Donald Trump lied to the American public about a Chinese spy balloon like this, the media would be furious. In fact, you'll also recall another Biden lie I now remember was that this happened during the Trump administration. We now know that's not true either. No Chinese spy balloon transited the United States hovering over military installations for extended time. That's not true. The Biden administration lied about that as well. What we have here is the Biden administration's damage control is a series of lies designed to put them in the best possible light, but not actually tell the American people the truth of what happened. That signals so much to the communists in China. That signals weakness. That signals a deference to China. That signals an inability to take strong action for national security. That signals a host of things about Joe Biden and the United States, none of which are good for us in the eyes of China. We look weak to China. And in fact, more and more information continues to come out. In fact, that the Chinese are escalating military plans in the Pacific, knowing that we don't have what it takes to stop them. Our supply chains are overwhelmed. Our weapon stocks are running low. The Biden administration, I'm still in the camp that we need to help Ukraine. I still think we need to help Ukraine because if we don't support Ukraine while they're killing Russians, at some point our kids are going to have to kill Russians. I still think that's a good thing. But the Biden administration doesn't seem capable of multitasking. They don't seem capable of rebuilding the supply chain. They don't seem capable of rebuilding the weapon stocks. They don't seem capable of bringing antitrust concerns against U.S. weapons manufacturers who have consolidated. They don't seem capable of ramping up military production. They don't seem capable of winding down military bureaucracy that stymies production and innovation. They don't seem capable of doing any of those things. You can kind of understand why so many Americans are skeptical of helping Ukrainians when we ourselves can't help ourselves in our own backyard here and abroad to be able to take on China. There was an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal the other day about our supply chain and weapon supplies running so low. Military commanders are starting to be concerned that if China were to step up its escalation quickly when it comes to Taiwan, we won't be able to do anything at all because we don't have the weapons to stop them, which probably is why the Chinese are escalating. Which came first, the chicken, the egg? China's desire to escalate, or the American military saying, hey, if they escalate, we're not going to be able to stop them because of our supply chain problems? I wonder what caused what.